Hey guys, today I'm going to attempt to answer a question that has plagued man since the dawn of time. Can you beat the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion without moving the camera? Okay, maybe not since the dawn of time, but I'm pretty sure Aristotle wrote a thesis on this or something. Anyway, there's going to be a hell of a lot to unpack here, so let's jump straight into the rules. Rule 1 is I cannot use or move the camera under any circumstances. This includes swapping between third and first person view. I'm going to be locked in first person view. The exception to this is if I get paralysed or knocked over, the game will force you into third person view to show you the falling over animation. Rule 2, no glitches, cheats or use of console commands. You know what, I think that's about it actually. In order to pull this off without accidentally moving the camera, I'm having to use a Xbox 360 controller plugged into my PC. I then disconnected my mouse from my PC after Oblivion was booted up. Therefore, I can't accidentally knock the camera. You know what, that could be rule 3. Okay, let's do this. So I'd just like to start by saying that I normally record my commentary as I do each section of the challenge, just so that I don't forget what I've done. I find it easier to comment on things while it's still fresh in my mind, so I still don't actually know if this is possible, but holy fuck, the sewers was a pain. So I went for a high elf character because I want to rely heavily on magic for this run. So after I make my first movement in the sewers, Vaelendreth starts talking. Normally I can hear him, but because I can only move forward, backwards, left and right, I can't turn round, so I can't properly hear what he's saying.
And you'll still be stuck in this rattle.
I hear what you say. Hibbity hoopla!
And it doesn't get much better when the Emperor and his guards arrive. And since I can't turn round, I'm forced to stare at the wall like I'm about to get a cavity search. Now, one good thing about this challenge is when you talk to NPCs, or NPCs talk to you, the camera will turn to face them. And this is something I plan on exploiting maliciously throughout this run. So, because I've played Oblivion just a couple of times, I know the exact layout of the sewers, and the direction the door will be that I have to get through. So I began talking to one of the guards called Glenroy to try and get him to turn my angle slightly so that I'd be lined up perfectly to get through the door later on. Once I felt I was lined up well enough, I took out the rats before progressing. It turns out you don't have to look down to actually hit the rats, so that's good. So I'd actually successfully done enough to line myself up with the door. The only issue was that I needed a key that was on the corpse of a goblin that I couldn't get because I couldn't move the camera. And seeing as I totally forgot that crouching was a thing, I had to start again, this time talking to the guards in a way where I could angle myself so I'd be facing down as well as in the right direction. To do this, I'd have to talk to them from a higher point of elevation. This was actually my 4th restart before I actually got the angle I needed. So now that I'd mastered the task of looking slightly down, I was able to loot Captain Renault's body. I got a steel short sword and a torch, which I'm sure will come in useful. And now I had the right angle to get the key and make it through to the next room. Now, I couldn't actually see the rats in the next area at all. I could hear them, and I could feel them hitting me, so I just swung my sword blindly. And as luck would have it, I was able to kill them. Since I'm a high elf, I have a lot of magicka that I can just regenerate my health, so they're not really an issue, they're just quite annoying to kill. And luckier still, even though I had nothing that I could use to change my camera angle in this area, I still had the correct view to get through the next door. So as this is the tutorial, the enemies are relatively easy. However, it is quite hard to fight goblins when you can't always see them or turn to look at them. There's also things that I won't be able to do all the time that I've normally taken for granted, such as looting chests. I already know that this is going to be a huge issue later on, especially when collecting necessary items. I mean, right now I can't even loot corpses because I can't look down, so things are only going to get harder from here. And by harder, I mean impossible. This room, this one specific, insignificant room, nearly broke me. You see, I am reasonably confident that I can do this game without moving the camera. This room, however, I can't. Well, I can, but it took me an extremely long time to work out how to do it. Let me explain. You see, upon entering this room, you will always be facing in the opposite direction of the door that you came through, okay? So, I kill all the enemies in the room, but the door that I have to go through to progress, I can't look at. And if I can't look at it, I can't go through it. Now, there are benches in this area, but I can't target them to sit on them to change my angle because I can't move the camera down. I spent ages trying different ways of getting through this room, from allowing the goblins to hit me with 0 fatigue in the hope that they would knock me over. I tried jumping into the walls. I tried letting the rats knock me over. Literal hours I spent in this room trying to work out how to actually get through this. I had actually given up. Like, I'm not joking, I gave up. But I just didn't seem to be able to let this go. I felt like there had to be a way around this. I began to think about this problem constantly. I found that I was beginning to think about this problem not only when I was at home, but when I was on break at work. There are no NPCs in this room to talk to. There is no way to change your angle. It cannot be done. Now, this really disappointed me because I was absolutely certain that I could have done this challenge. I planned this out carefully and thought of nearly everything except this room. This had been a huge oversight and I was so disappointed. Then, one night while I was cooking, still contemplating this issue, I remembered something that happened to me inside of Sankator in previous challenges. With all the excitement of a child on Christmas morning, I took my pot off the heat, whipped out my phone, and googled what I thought was the answer. You see, I found that inside of Sankator, the ghosts in there would sometimes knock me over, and after googling why, I knew I had the answer. You see, you will fall down when your fatigue is damaged after it's already at 0. And thankfully, I had an abundance of something that could replicate that inside the sewers. The goblins in this room carry rat meat. There are also several rats in this area. After testing this out on a different save file, I knew I finally had my answer. All I had to do was kill everything in this room and loot the rat meat from them. Only it wasn't that simple. You see, because I can't look down, I still can't loot them, which means I can't get the rat meat. I tried launching fireballs at the corpses in a way of forcing them upward so that I could try and crouch and maybe just make contact. Eventually, after attempting this for, I would say, several hours to be totally honest, I found a specific corner of the room that would allow me to kill the enemies in here and loot them. But it wasn't that simple. You see, I would have to kill the goblins and the rats while they were on top of or near these objects. I would also have to constantly save after I successfully looted every corpse. And once I had enough rat meat, it was simply a case of draining my own fatigue and then eating the rat meat. It had been about a week since I'd initially given up, so this was a huge win. I could eat the rat meat, which would make my character fall over. Unfortunately, the direction in which I would fall over was not guaranteed, so I would have to reload a few times, but eventually I got the angle I needed and got the hell out of this room. I'm sure there's a lesson here about never giving up, or maybe I should have just thought of this in the first place, but either way it's done. I met up with the Emperor and his gang once again and picked the Lady as my star sign, giving me a boost to endurance and willpower. After the blades cut through all the Mythic Dawn agents in the next room, I started repeatedly talking to them and the Emperor to get the angle I needed to get through the next door.
Damn it! The gate is barred from the other side! A trap!
It's a trap!
After the Emperor had been slain and Boris mopped up the rest of the Mythic Dawn, it was time for me to choose my class. I created a custom class that was effectively just a mage, but I swapped out willpower for endurance. So this next part was absolute torture. First of all, I wasn't lined up with the exit tunnel, nor was I looking down. So I decided to attack Boris, getting him to chase me to some stairs, where I would then talk to him from an elevation, allowing me to look slightly down. I then headed back to the tunnel, this time remembering that I could actually sneak as well. Still not lined up correctly. So I went back and spoke to Boris again, and repeatedly spoke to him until I had the angle that I wanted. And then after I'd done this, I'd have to jump in the air and try and catch him in conversation mid-air. Nope, still not enough. However, because I was already facing slightly down, it was easier in my next attempts to jump and enter a conversation with him. This would force my view even lower. And after crouching, I finally had the angle that I needed to get through the hatch. Ignoring all enemies, I made for the exit to the sewers. There was nothing stopping me now, but... Hold on, wait. Oh, Okay, so apparently there's a gate I have to get through. Okay, not to worry. I'll just do the setup again to make sure I have the correct angle, and then I will get Boris to attack me, at which point he will chase me through to the next area. I can then use him to talk to him in order to change my angle. That should work, right? Well, no, not exactly. He would not follow me, and I suspect it's because of the barred gate. Okay, so now I have to speak to him again and change my angle so that I can go around the back of the barred gate, open it up, and then come back round, do my setup again to get through the hatch. I also have to assume that he's going to successfully chase me through to the next area. Several conversations and jumps later, and I was finally ready to get out of here. Follow me. Follow me now. Right, that's it, Boris. You're going to start doing as you're told. After I finally managed to get him through to the next area, I decided it would be a good idea to bring him as far into the room as I could. Therefore, when I surrendered to him, I would have more time to actually engage in conversation with him, turning my angle to where I needed it. Only after he disengaged, he decided to walk away, leaving me to deal with all the enemies. After I dealt with them, lo and behold, Boris had gone back. So I had a few more attempts. This time I'd managed to angle myself to get through the gate. Finally, there was nothing stopping. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. So this time I couldn't get through the last gate to exit the sewers. Several more attempts later, and I do mean several more attempts of me either missing the angle or repeatedly getting killed, and I'd finally done it. I got the angle I needed to get through the gate and the last sewer door. I was free at last. Also, based on what I know about this game, it can only get easier from here. I have a set out plan for everything in this game, except the sewers. I did not realise how difficult this was going to be. So one of the hardest parts of this challenge is simply just getting in and out of buildings. When I first fast travelled to the Imperial city, I had the angle I needed to enter a shop. I sold what little loot that I'd collected within the sewers. However, in order to leave again, I would have to use my trick of repeatedly talking to the shopkeeper in order to turn round very slowly. And that's really what makes everything take so long. And it's why I actually started this challenge 6 years ago. No, I'm joking, of course, but it does take a long time. So my initial plan was to first get a scamp from the discount spell shop in the Imperial city. I used an Imperial watchman to get the angle I needed before going in and buying the scamp. Then after talking to the shopkeeper repeatedly, I got the right angle to leave the shop. The next thing on my list was heavy armour. I definitely wanted to be armoured for this run, so I headed off to Battlethorn Castle, fast travelling to Coral first. I knew there would be some dead knights on the floor with full set of steel armour, and I used my scamp to help get rid of the marauders. Unfortunately though, I could not get the angle to actually loot the corpses, so this totally failed. So then my next plan was to get lots of money. In order to do this, I was first going to power level my conjuration all the way up to level 75. I then fast travelled to Coral with the aim of joining the Mages Guild. I used the NPCs outside, repeatedly talking to them until I had the correct angle to enter. I wanted a Daedrith, unfortunately I didn't have the money, So my new plan was to raid the Mages Guild for all of their potion making equipment. I used the NPCs inside the Mages Guild buildings to get all the angles I needed to collect the necessary alchemy equipment. Just getting all of the angles to do what I needed to took a very long time. It would all be worth it, however, because I could sell all of this equipment and make enough money to buy a Daedrith. Also, while I was doing this, I became over-encumbered, so had to drop all of my clothes and weapons. I sold the rest of what I had to the Colovian traders across from the Mages Guild, because it lines up perfectly with my point of view. Another thing I'd have to be careful about when using NPCs to turn round is that I don't accidentally pick something up that I'm not supposed to, as this is considered shoplifting. I fast travelled back to Coral, used a Rana to get the angle I needed, re-entered the Mages Guild and bought a Daedrith. One thing I've realised from this experience is that I will have to be very careful what buildings I actually enter, because if buildings do not have NPCs inside them, this is going to be essentially impossible. So to make a long story short, my plan to get money was to use the bookmaker to get the angle to enter the arena. Then I would use my Daedrith to smash my way through all the fights. Because I'm level 1, my Daedrith will be extremely overpowered. I forgot to record the first fight, but effectively it doesn't work because you will always be facing away from the door you originally entered when you start an arena fight, and there is no way to turn round after you kill your enemy, or before you kill your enemy, or whatever. You just can't turn round in the arena. Okay, so that wasn't going to work either. So I decided, you know what, let's just head to Kvatch then. However, I knew I would need a companion in order to help me change my angle inside the Oblivion Gate, so I joined the Fighters Guild with the intention of doing the first few missions. You see, on one of the Fighters Guild missions you will be given a Wood Elf companion, and I thought I could take him into the gate with me. The only problem is I couldn't get past the first Fighters Guild quest. You see, there's a door I have to go through in order to talk to the rat lady, and this just wasn't working because I didn't have the angle. I tried starting a fight with my skeleton inside her house with the hopes that she would actually come out and try and kill my skeleton, at which point I could talk to her. However, this did not happen. Furthermore, I now realised that I had no way of actually leaving the house either, because I was facing away from the door, and I hadn't saved in quite a while. So I decided to steal a few of her vases, hoping that the town watch would show up and arrest me, which they did. So now I was out of her house, however I still needed a companion. Enter Mazoga the Orc. Now the problem with Mazoga is that she is actually a killable NPC. I wanted an unkillable one, but this would have to do for now. I had to go and speak to Weebamna and then use his girlfriend or wife or whatever to turn around and leave. I fast travelled back to the castle, which allowed me the angle to re-enter the castle, and spoke to Mazoga. I now had a companion.
Go and see for yourself. Kvatch is a smoking ruin. We're all that's left. Do you understand me? Everyone else is dead.
Out of here! Calm down! Get a hold of yourself!
So now that I had a companion, I felt pretty confident that I could get through the Kvatch gate at least. I let the guards deal with all the scamps before talking to Savli and Matthias, and heading inside the Kvatch gate. Now, to be totally honest, I believe I already have the angle set up from entering the Kvatch gate to get into the Sigil Tower. So it's really just a case of letting Mazoga and the Kvatch guard deal with any scamps along the way, as well as my Daedrith. However, I do have to be careful because Mazoga can be killed. Now, I could have done this with the Kvatch guard, but as you can see, he's already dead. He always seems to die. So I was right in that my default camera angle would give me a view of the door to the Sigil Tower. Once inside, I'd first have to let Mazoga and my Daedrith deal with any enemies that are around. I then used Mazoga to turn me around so that I could get through the next door. I also did this in the next room, however I didn't need to because the Daedra always opened the door to attack me anyway. But to be honest, the enemies inside the Kvatch gate are pretty straightforward. I have an overpowered Daedrith. I also have Mazoga, who, whilst she can die, is extremely powerful. Also, I don't always have to use companions to get through doors. If there's any chairs about, I can sit in them and then stand up, changing my camera angle.
Die, damn you!
After we killed the Sigil Keeper, I used Mazoga to line myself up to backtrack through the doors. Only I actually forgot to get the Sigil Key from his corpse, so I had to come back and then do a series of jumps so that I would be facing down in order to loot his corpse. Now that I think about it, I actually don't know how I'm going to do Sankator. I really can't think of a way of doing this because, as far as I'm aware, no companions will come with me. I used Mazoga to line myself up to get through the next 3 doors, smashing my way through with her and my Daedrith. The next part was difficult because there's a very thin bridge that you have to cross, and I'm facing the opposite way from it, so I can't actually see where I'm going. Also, Mazoga died in this attempt, which I didn't really think would be an issue. I didn't bring her here to fight, I only brought her here to change my angles to get through doors. However, I now knew that I could get to the Sigil Stone without her. Only the Sigil Room went absolutely terrible on my first attempt. Because I can't see what I'm doing, I nearly made it to the top before falling off, at which point I was totally demolished by the enemies. And my last save point was before that thin bridge we mentioned earlier, you know, where Mazoga died. So I had to conquer that again, this time falling off another 2 times. This time Mazoga actually survived, so I took her all the way to the Sigil Room and finally grabbed the Sigil Stone. So, now that I'd completed the Oblivion Gate, I no longer needed Mazoga, so I told her to take a hike.
You're fired!
Only I couldn't because she won't leave me, so I just told her to wait there. So I headed through Kvatch with the rest of the guard and my Daedrith, killing all of the sieging enemies outside before heading into the chapel. But for some reason, I couldn't get Martin to come with me. The dialogue option was not available. Now, I assumed this was because I still had Mazoga as a companion. But as Martin was leaving Kvatch, I opened up my quest log to try and select the quest, making Martin my primary mission, hoping this would fix the issue. This is where I realised I forgot to do something very important. That's right, I forgot to actually start this quest. I have yet to deliver the Amulet of Kings, therefore I don't have this quest. I nearly snapped Joffrey's neck trying to get a conversation out of him. And then once I delivered the amulet, I used Prior Mabel to turn myself around to get out of here. So after I fast travelled to Kvatch, my default camera angle was slightly northeast. This was actually extremely handy. As I've already displayed, I have no intention of doing this game in the order the developers intended. Mazoga died while waiting outside Kvatch. I don't know how, but I don't care either. Now that I had Martin, my first stop was the ancient Ayleid ruin of Miscarcand. I could use Martin to get through nearly every door, change my angle however I wanted. Also, Martin is not killable yet. Now this does not mean that Miscarcand was easy. On the contrary, it was extremely difficult. You see, not only was I having to stumble about in the dark, not knowing which way I was going, but there are also certain gates in Miscarcand that will only be opened by pushing certain buttons. Now obviously I can use Martin to turn around, however because I don't actually know where the buttons are, I thought it would be more beneficial to start with at least to just clear out the enemies while facing in the same direction. And then once I have the map revealed to me, I can use that to navigate. Effectively what I was doing is walking a little bit and then opening up the map to see if I was travelling in the desired direction. Initially I felt that I could just do this by finding all of the buttons to open the necessary gates eventually, because even if I couldn't, I could always Google where the buttons are. Strangely enough though, I didn't actually need to do this. I just organically found the buttons by exploring. See, because I brought Martin with me, turning round was never actually a problem. I mean, yes, it did take a very long time to do even the simplest task, but with a Daedrith and an indestructible ally, time was on my side. I actually didn't realise at first that I'd entered the room with the Great Welkid Stone, because I couldn't see it. So it was a nice surprise when I eventually found it. I saved before I took the Great Welkid Stone, as I knew the King of Miscarcand would appear. Now, to be honest, this fight wasn't much of a challenge either, because I had obviously Martin and my Daedrith with me. I did try to record some of the fight, however, because I can only face one direction, I missed quite a lot of it. I did, however, manage to catch the last few dying moments of the King of Miscarcand. And by crouching, I was able to loot the key from him and get the hell out of there. Upon leaving Miscarcand, the first thing I did was fast travel to the Imperial city because I now needed glow dust. I used Martin to turn enough to enter the Mystic Emporium and pickpocketed some glow dust from one of the shopkeepers. I then had a long, painful process of using Martin to turn back round to face the door to leave. I then dropped the glow dust in a secluded area knowing that the guards were coming to arrest me. After paying my fine, I fast travelled back to collect the glow dust. However, nothing in this challenge is quite so simple. I had to repeatedly jump while talking to Martin, slowly edging my camera angle downward. I then fast travelled to Shadenhall as I knew roughly where the Azura Shrine was. I spent a lot of time here just running blindly into mountains. I was also trying to discover the location of the Mythic Dawn Shrine so that I could fast travel back here later. So I actually find the gutted mine first, and this is the location of Azura's quest, so I knew that the Azura Shrine had to be nearby. I could then just follow the road round until I found it. After using Martin to turn enough so that I could actually face the Azura Shrine, I was given the quest to clear out the vampires from the gutted mine. So looking back on this, the sensible thing to do would have been to fast travel to the gutted mine because I'd already discovered it. But oh no, not me. I have to do things the hard way. Because I had Martin and my Daedrith with me, the vampires were an absolute joke, so I had no trouble here. I used Martin to turn round after I killed them all and left. I could then fast travel back to the Azura Shrine, which thankfully put me in the correct direction to collect the Azura Star. So I already knew this because I tried it in the past, but I wouldn't be able to get Martin into Sankator with me. I did, however, discover the location of it before I returned him. And it's not really worth mentioning, but originally I decided that I was going to start the Fighters Guild quest proper this time, so that I could get Maglia with me. I've since changed my mind. I have a better idea about how I'm going to do this, but we'll get to that. I just wanted you guys to know that I wasted a lot of time trying to turn round to get in and out of this house doing this quest. And now to do something that normally happens near the start of an Oblivion challenge. I returned Martin back to Waynon Priory. You guys know the process by now. I had enough people around me to get in and out of here without any issue. So my next mission now is to go and find Boris and try and track down the agents of the Mythic Dawn. When I arrived in the Imperial city, I had to use one of the guards to turn round so that I could face the door to the inn that Boris is staying at.
Keep your blade sheathed, you murdering bastard, or I'll put you down myself.
Holy shit, that escalated quickly. So once inside Luther Broad's boarding house, it was quite difficult to actually get a conversation with Boris. You see, in order to trigger his dialogue, you actually have to sit down in the chair next to him, which means I would have to target it, which meant looking down. In order to do this, I repeatedly jumped while trying to engage in dialogue with Winston, an NPC in Luther Broad's. Once I had the angle I needed, I was able to target the bench, sit down and talk to Boris. Now, I would always be facing forward when I sit down, so had Boris not automatically engaged in dialogue, I would have failed this challenge. But now it's time for a very serious issue. After Boris got up and left, I realised that I could not stand up. You see, in order to stand up, I would have to press A. Unfortunately, this just got me in a conversation with Luther Broad, over and over again, and he wouldn't move. I tried using the wait command, but he still wouldn't move. I actually had to wait a couple of minutes before Winston, the NPC, came and spoke to Luther, and he finally moved, allowing me to stand up. Then after a painstaking process of using Luther to turn round to face the door that Boris went through, Boris and my Daedrith were able to take out the Mythic Dawn agent, at which point I would have to loot his corpse to get the Mythic Dawn book. So this once again involved jumping while speaking to Boris in order to get an angle that I could use to actually loot the corpse. Unfortunately, while I was trying to do this, I went into sneak mode and accidentally pickpocketed Boris.
Pickpocket, pickpocket, guard your person! Stop right there, criminal scum!
Oh, you have got to be f***ing kidding me. I didn't even get the book yet, which means I now have to fast travel back use a guard to get the angle I need to re-enter the boarding house, use the NPCs inside to get me back into the basement, and then do the whole setup again in order to try and get this fucking book. Once I had the book, I would have to be very quick as Boris will leave the basement, so I'd have to use him to angle myself in a way to actually get back out the door before he leaves. After leaving the boarding house, I fast travelled to the Arcane University, where I spoke to Tarmina about uncovering the secrets of the Mythic Dawn. I then used Bothiel, however you pronounce her name anyway, to turn round. Fast travelling to the market district, I used a guard to turn so that I could enter Phintius's bookshop. I managed to get the next book from Gwyneth before using Phintius to turn round and leave. After a lot more playing around, trying to get in and out of Luther Broads, and then jumping up and down talking to Boris, I got the angle I needed to enter the sewers. So the sewers are extremely straightforward because there are simply just rats, goblins and mud crabs down there. Boris will kill all of them and I can use him to turn to whatever angle I need, so this wasn't an issue. However, it is very important that Boris meet the sponsor and not myself, because if I meet the sponsor, I first have to sit in the chair, which I don't think I can get an angle for, so Boris meeting him is much easier. It's also very important that Boris survive this fight, because if he doesn't, I have no way of changing my angle to get out of here. I was really starting to panic here because my Daedrith was blocking the door fighting the sponsor, while Boris was on the other side fighting the other two Mythic Dawn agents. He could have very easily been killed here, and it's a miracle that he wasn't. And because Boris survived, I was actually able to use him to angle myself to loot the corpse of the Mythic Dawn agent and take the last book of Manka Cameron's commentaries. I then had to painstakingly follow Boris all the way out of the sewers, as I would need him to change my angle in order to get through doors. After returning to Tarmina and discovering the location of the Mythic Dawn Shrine, I returned to the market district, where I paid the alchemy shop a visit. I sold all of the equipment that I'd collected so far and used the money to buy ingredients. I was looking for specifically things that would damage health or damage fatigue. I then fast travelled to Coral, used the NPCs to turn round again, bought a remote manipulation spell and a summon ghost spell. See, I have to think at least 3 steps ahead of what I'm currently doing, thinking about what's coming and what's going to be achievable. I then fast travelled to Green Emperor Way and learned the location of the Mythic Dawn Shrine before fast travelling to Shadenhall. Once I discovered the location of Lake Arius Caverns, where the Mythic Dawn Shrine is located, I could simply just use fast travel to appear outside the door and be facing it. So I spent a lot of time inside the Mythic Dawn Shrine and made a lot of mistakes before stumbling upon a strategy that would actually work. I'm only going to show how I actually did this because, long story short, killing Harrow initially along with all the other Mythic Dawn guards doesn't work because you can't get the correct angle to get the Mysterium Xerxes. So I followed Harrow through the Mythic Dawn Shrine, using him to alter my angle so that I was looking down. At which point I stole the Mysterium Xerxes, summoned a Daedrith, and let the Daedrith kill everything for me. I did die a few times here because I'm extremely weak to magic, but it was just a case of reloading and trying again. And because I was looking down, not only was I able to get all of my supplies back from Harrow, but also the Mysterium Xerxes. Unfortunately, however, I was now facing the wrong way to leave. I had no NPCs to talk to, and I couldn't turn round. So unfortunately guys, I was not able to beat Oblivion without moving. No, I'm joking. So I was able to overcome this, but I wanted to offer a little challenge to the 3 of you that are still watching. It might be fun, who knows, but I invite you to now pause the video and have a think about how I actually did this. How did I turn my character around without moving the camera and without any NPCs to talk to that allowed me to change my angle? So if you'd like, pause the video now and write in the comments how you think I did it. So are you guys ready for the answer? Don't worry if you didn't get it, because how I did this is so outlandishly stupid. So the first movement is quite subtle, so keep an eye on my compass if you don't catch it. Step 1 was to jump around until I drained all of my fatigue, at which point I would summon a ghost. I would then attack the ghost. This would force my own ghost to attack me with a cold spell, which damages your fatigue. Did you catch that? You see, in Oblivion, when your fatigue reaches 0 and then it is damaged, you will fall over. I know some gatekeeper's gonna tell me that's not how it works, but hey look, it just happened again. You see, by draining my own fatigue and then allowing my ghost to attack me, I can fall over, which will then change the angle my character is facing. And I used this technique to get any angle I needed to get out of the Mythic Dawn Shrine. I used my Daedrith to take out any enemies, and I used the ghost to change my direction. It's important to note that falling over will only change your character's direction. It will not change whether you're looking up or down. But that's how I escaped the Mythic Dawn Shrine. So very soon Martin is going to ask me to collect a few items in order to perform a ritual. But since I've already collected a few of these, the next few quests are wrapped up in a neat little package. First off, Joffrey wants me to find some spies that are located just outside of Bruma at a runestone. I take out one of the spies with my Daedrith without any problem. I then fast travel to Bruma Castle and use the guards to turn so that I could get through the doors to speak to Captain Bird. I then did the same thing to leave again. After getting permission from Captain Bird, I entered Geralt's house to search for any clues I might find. Now, it's important to note that I have to enter a basement area of this house, which I can't do because I can't look down. And I couldn't just reload because I hadn't saved in a while. Also, autosave would just put me in this house, so I had to use my ghost technique to turn around to leave. What was annoying about this is that I've actually done this to myself. I should have seen this coming. Once I was back outside, I used a guard to get the angle I needed to re-enter the door. I then attacked the guard and he followed me inside. At which point I did my technique of jumping while trying to talk to him. Now the immediate danger here is he's always attacking me. Also, I don't think this would have worked had I not been a journeyman of acrobatics, because I don't think you can actually do anything while jumping unless you're at least a journeyman. And it is necessary to block while talking to the guard because it's the only way I can surrender to him. So once I entered the basement, picking up Geralt's orders was very hard because the guard was attacking me and I had to use him to set up my angle. He ended up killing me a few times, both before and after I'd managed to get the orders, which was really annoying. Eventually though, I managed to line up everything perfectly, get the orders, and then surrender to the guard, at which point I could just pay the fine and he would take me outside of the prison. Then it was simply a task of fast travelling back to Cloud Ruler Temple and delivering the news to Joffrey. Martin then asked me for a Daedric artifact, but remember, we already have one. After I handed over the Azura Star to Martin, my next task was to help Captain Bird close a small Oblivion gate located just outside of Bruma. I only mention this because it's part of the main storyline, however I'm not going to go into specifics about this for the following reasons. 1. Captain Bird will always stay with me, and 2. He cannot die. Therefore, I always have an NPC to change the angle I need to get through this gate. By now you guys are well familiar with how I've been doing this, so I didn't really want to waste your time with this gate. And upon returning to Cloud Ruler once again, it seems the next item I need is the Blood of a God. It's time for Sankator. Now, because I'd already discovered Sankator earlier when I tried to get Martin inside, I could simply just fast travel there. However, I didn't have the angle I needed to actually enter it. So I used my ghost technique from earlier to get him to knock me over until I had the angle I needed. And much like the Bruma Gate, you guys are well familiar with how I'm doing this now. I went through Sankator, used the Daedrith to kill any ghosts that might be around. I also used him to take out the blades that I needed to kill. Oh, and once I kill the blades, their ghosts appear that I can talk to, so that helps to change my angle as well. Nothing really too much to say about Senkator apart from when I killed the warden, I couldn't loot his corpse, so I had to just pick the lock, which was okay. And between using the ghosts of the blades and my own ghost to knock me over, I was able to get in and get the armor of Tiber Septim without any trouble actually. Upon returning to Martin once again, it seems there's another item he needs, a Great Welkid Stone, but remember, we already have that. So the next thing I have to do is allow a Great Gate to open outside of Bruma, so that I can run inside Hell itself and grab a Great Sigil Stone. Now, I was very, very worried about this gate. I thought this would be a run ender because you are timed. You get something like 15 minutes to get through this gate, so fighting isn't really encouraged. My first plan was to simply just run through the gate and use acrobatics to jump to impassable places and skip out most of it. This didn't work, so I'd have to reload from the start of the gate. I did, however, find a door to the Smoke and Scorch, and I was able to get through this door without manipulating my angle whatsoever. It's very lucky that this door exists, otherwise I would have to waste time using my ghost to try and get me to turn in order to get through one of the first doors to play this the way the developers intended. But then they did put this door here, so they must have intended some players to go this way. While I was travelling this route, I did find a door that I couldn't get through, so I had to waste valuable time trying to get my ghost to knock me over. This did work, but like I say, it's such a waste of time. Now that I was inside one of the towers, I could make my way to the top and unlock the giant gates. When I made my way back down the tower, however, I did not have the angle to leave through the door. Now, I'd wasted enough time already trying to use the ghost, so I thought it might be quicker to just drain my own fatigue and then eat some rat meat. I would fall over and with any luck land at the right angle to get out of here. Of course, this did not work, so I had to reload and try again. I did get it on my second attempt though. I did the same thing again to get into the Sigil Tower, but unfortunately I would have to continue wasting time using my ghost to knock me over in certain areas. I mean, yes, it's far from ideal, but I'm now out of rat meat. Surprisingly enough though, I made it into the Sigil room with 4 minutes to spare. This gave me more than enough time to take the Great Sigil Stone, close the gate, and be on my way to paradise. So if you've stuck with me this far, I really appreciate it. I know this is a long one, but you have no idea how long this actually took me to play. My last quest was to make it through Mythic paradise and kill him, taking back the Amulet of Kings. Now, luckily for me, inside of Mythic paradise, there are what are called Ascended Mortals that I can talk to. They will be killed by the creatures in the garden, but they will always respawn, so I will always have NPCs to talk to if I need to change my angle. You will always be approached by a Daedra called Cathatet who wants to talk to us about getting the bands of the Chosen. I made sure I was on the left-hand side of him, so that when he spoke to me, I would turn to the right. It was my hope that this would angle me up with the door, so that when I killed him, I could simply just go through the door. I forgot, however, that I'd need to loot the bands of the Chosen from his corpse. So I had to go back and use one of the Ascended Mortals to do my jumping trick, so that I could look down and loot his corpse. It also helped that we were on stairs and that he was a lower elevation to me. Now that I was in the next area, I could once again use the NPCs to turn to whatever angle I needed, until I met Eldermill. Now, Eldermill is one of the Ascended Mythic Dawn who will actually help you and follow you through Mythic paradise. You can see where I'm going with this. Now, Eldermill does leave you after he helps you cross the Lake of Fire, so I had to use my ghost at one point to help me to turn to an angle I needed. But after meeting up with Eldermill again, there was nothing left to do but go and kill Manka Cameron. Remember like 20 minutes ago when I bought all of those alchemy ingredients, specifically things that would damage health? Well, they're gonna come in handy now. I felt reasonably confident that my Daedrith would be able to sweep the room. However, I know how difficult this fight was, and after everything I'd gone through, I was not willing to f around with this. I used nearly every potion that I made on Cameron straight away. I was not playing around here. He had to die, and quickly. See, because I'm a high elf, I'm excessively weak to his magic, so 2 to 3 shots would probably kill me. And thankfully, because Cameron is the anchor to paradise itself, I don't actually need to loot his corpse in order to get the Amulet of Kings. It is just given to me automatically. And now there's nothing left to do but return Martin to the Temple of the One to light the dragon fires. I actually had to sit in one of the chairs in the Elder Council in order to get the angle I needed to leave. I then just repeatedly spoke to Martin until I had the angle I needed to enter the Temple of the One and beat the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion without moving the camera. So this challenge took a lot of thought, time and planning, and this is definitely the most fun I've ever had, not only playing Oblivion, but playing an Oblivion challenge. This forced me to really think about the game mechanics of Oblivion, as well as teaching me some new things about this game I would never have thought possible. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this challenge as much as I've enjoyed playing it. Oblivion has a nostalgic place in my heart and I'm always going to love it. There will always be Oblivion challenges on this channel, although I don't think I'll be playing the remastered if it ever comes out. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a long grey beard by the time Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, but never mind. Anyway guys, I'd just like to thank you once again so much for watching today. Please like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Leave any comments if you do have any, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.